Hey there, Flo here with another Bible reading stream. Hey, Alameen and Kame, how you doing? So, I'm just going to get straight into it. It's kind of late, getting a late start. Decided to set up this lamp today. I like the lower lights. I kind of like, Christmas lights and candles and things like that. It's also in my title screen. I have a lamp similar to this, a smaller one, so I decided to throw this one in there. But also, little secret that I'll reveal now. My title screen here that I've been using is actually not open to a random verse, but a very specific one. And I'll zoom up on it for you so you can see. So my little flow guy is standing on Psalm 119, 105, which says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." And so yeah, that's kind of one of the verses that inspired me to think of doing this. And there's others. There's a lot of others similar to that, but so I decided to throw the lamp on there just for fun. Also, today's reading talks about a lamp a little bit as well, so it's appropriate. Anyway, I'm gonna pray and get straight into it so we can not be up late. I mean, I know it's different time everywhere else in the world, but try to keep it pretty brief on my Bible reading streams so they aren't overwhelming. So yeah, do a quick prayer and then start reading. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for bringing me through another day. Thank you for keeping my discouragement to a level that I can handle, and thank you for the snow and the beauty that brings. Thank you for washing us clean by your blood and reasoning with us and doing unreasonable things for us and covering our sins with your sacrifice and washing us to be as white as snow. I pray that you would guide us by the light of your word into your truth and help us to crucify the flesh in us so that we can become more like you, and help us not to be worried about what the world thinks of us. And the world is trying to make it a shameful thing, an embarrassing thing to follow you, which makes absolutely no sense. Most powerful, most loving, gracious, good being there ever was, one who made us all. There's nothing to be ashamed of in you, and I pray that you would help us to be bold with you, to not hide you under a cover, but I pray that you would be that lamp that people see in us, the light of the world, and not for people to see us as something special, but to see you somehow through us. Humble us so that you can be the one that shows through and not our failings. And thank you for all these things. I pray that anybody here that hears this now or later, that if they need comfort or forgiveness, pray that you would offer it to them and lead them into your paths, and pray that your word would be spoken clearly, even though I'm not a clear speaker, that the message of the words would come through clearly, and that if anything is in there that we need to hear today, that you would just make that shine so clear that we can't ignore it, and not just to hear it and listen to it, but to obey it and apply it to our lives and build our lives upon it. And thank you for all these things. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so we are reading Job chapters 29 to 31, and then we're going to finish John chapter 1, which is a really long chapter. We started out a few days ago on that, just the very first part, and Today we're going to be reading verses 15 to 51, so that's quite a long chapter. So yeah, I'm just going to get into it. I don't necessarily have any plans to discuss anything, but just mainly reading the word and seeing what happens. So I don't read these in advance, so I don't have any plan of what I'm going to say or what I'm going to feel when I read it. It's always a surprise. Reading it I can't say for the first time, but for the first time this time around along with you, so I'm discovering it afresh. All right, let's go for it. Job chapter 29. Job again took up his parable and said, "Oh, that I were as in the months of old, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone on my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. As I was in my prime, when the friendship of God was in my tent. When the Almighty was yet with me, and my children were around me, when my steps were washed with butter, and the rock poured out streams of oil for me. When I went out to the city gate, when I prepared my seat in the street. The young men saw me and hid themselves. The aged rose up and stood. The princes refrained from talking and laid their hand on their mouth. The voice of the nobles was hushed, and their tongue stuck to the roof of their mouth. For when the ear heard me, then it blessed me, and when the eye saw me, it commended me. Because I delivered the poor who cried, and the fatherless also, who had no one to help him. The blessing of him who was ready to perish came on me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My justice was as a robe and a diadem. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. I researched the cause of him whom I didn't know. I broke the jaws of the unrighteous and plucked the prey out of his teeth. Then I said, I will die in my own house. I will count my days as the sand. My root is spread out to the waters. The dew lies all night on my branch. My glory is fresh in me. My bow is renewed in my hand. Men listened to me, waited, and kept silence for my counsel. After my words they didn't speak again. My speech fell on them. They waited for me as for the rain. Their mouths drank as with the spring rain. I smiled on them when they had no confidence. They didn't reject the light of my face. I chose out their way and sat as chief. I lived as a king in the army, as one who comforts the mourners. So just going back to what we read earlier, where I'm reminded when his friends suddenly turn on him for no apparent reason and accuse him of very specific sins. Interestingly enough, the reverse of those sins is spoken here. And Job isn't boasting, he's just remembering basically the good old days before all this terrible stuff happened to him. He's remembering the respect that he had in the community, all the people that he's blessed, and because he was a righteous man, or he still is a righteous man, and he's not really understanding why he's going through the difficult time that he is now. And he's just like dreaming like, oh man, if I could just step back, had a time machine. We've all kind of thought that, I'm sure I have anyway. Just like, if I could just go back to those days, oh man, that was good. But yeah, just more importantly, this helps us remember that Job was a good man. He did all the right things, and people respected him for it. Kami says, yeah, the different actual accusations are all symbolic of the different reasons we think we're suffering. It's great stuff, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy though, like his friends just like absolutely, what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Basically, they just threw him under the bus, like for no good reason. They were around when his life was good like this. They knew that he did all those things to help the poor and the widow, and they knew that he's a good man. But because bad things happened to him, they assumed that he deserved those bad things. No, they were not the best friends. The worst. The funny thing is, though, at the beginning of the story, when they come to him and just see, they don't recognize him because of how all the terrible things that have happened to him. And they just wept with him for 7 days in silence. That's like, and Job even mentions that earlier. It's like, you did wise, in that moment. How come you didn't just leave it there? But then after that, they just turned on him and became fools, really. Just showed their true colors. I tend to think that they're not just totally evil men. I think they're just misguided, and the prevailing idea of the day and in their culture is that if bad things happen to you, it's because of some sin. I think they're just really following their upbringing and their culture. They didn't know any better, and in a way, I feel like part of what the blessing of Job is that they got turned around, they got corrected. They didn't have to live the rest of their lives in that deceptive culture. They got to, have their eyes opened in the end, and we'll see that when God confronts them. They tried but failed in their own power, yeah. I think they really meant well. I think they wanted to help restore their friend Job, but they just had no idea. They didn't have the tools necessary to do so. They have no understanding of what was going on, so just misjudged, mislabeled the situation. So yeah, let's go on to chapter 30. But now those who are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I considered unworthy to put with my sheepdogs. Of what use is the strength of their hands to me, men in whom ripe age has perished? They are gaunt from lack and famine. They gnaw the dry ground in the gloom of waste and desolation. They pluck salt herbs by the bushes. The roots of the broom tree are their food. They are driven out from among men. They cry after them as after a thief, so that they dwell in frightful valleys and in holes of the earth and of the rocks. They bray among the bushes. They are gathered together under the nettles. They are children of fools, yes, children of wicked men. They were flogged out of the land. Now I have become their song. Yes, I am a byword to them. They abhor me. They stand aloof from me, and don't hesitate to spit in my face. For he has untied his cord and afflicted me, and they have thrown off restraint before me. On my right hand rise the rabble. They thrust aside my feet. They cast up against me their ways of destruction. They mar my path. They promote my destruction without anyone's help. As through a wide breach they come. They roll themselves in amid the ruin. Terrors have turned on me. They chase my honor as the wind. My welfare has passed away as the cloud. Now my soul is poured out within me. Days of affliction have taken hold of me. In the night season my bones are pierced in me, and the pains that gnaw me take no rest. My garment is disfigured by great force. It binds me about as the collar of my tunic. He has cast me into the mire. I have become like dust and ashes. I cry to you, and you do not answer me. I stand up, and you gaze at me. You have turned to be cruel to me. With the might of your hand you persecute me. You lift me up to the wind and drive me with it. You dissolve me in the storm. For I know that you will bring me to death, to the house appointed for all living. However, doesn't one stretch out a hand in his fall, or in his calamity therefore cry for help? Didn't I weep for him who was in trouble? Wasn't my soul grieved for the needy? When I looked for good, then evil came. When I waited for light, darkness came. My heart is troubled and doesn't rest. Days of affliction have come on me. I go mourning without the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry for help. I am a brother to jackals and a companion to ostriches. My skin grows black and peels from me. My bones are burned with heat. Therefore my harp is turned to mourning, and my pipe into the voice of those who weep. It's crazy how, like, it sounds like Job has nobody. Like, he was treated like a king. People, like, literally put their hands over their mouth, gasping when they saw him, because, you know, his riches and beauty, I guess, natural, just awe. You know, he was a rich man. He had massive possessions and servants and a big family, and he helped all those in need. And his advice was taken by anyone who heard, because they knew he was wise. They knew he followed God. All this stuff, like, everybody knew who he was and respected him well. And he wasn't a proudful man. He didn't force people to respect him. They just did because they knew from just observing him. But then all of a sudden, like, everybody turns or just leaves him behind. He becomes a joke in the community. All the immoral people start laughing at him and spitting in his face, because, you know, it's like, oh, look what happened to him. Just, you know, laughing at him, even though he helped all the people who that happened to in the community. It's just crazy that everybody turned on him like that. Yeah, you would think that, you know, being such a community leader, somebody that helped all those in need, would, when it came his time to suffer, that, you know, people would actually have compassion for him. But nope, doesn't always work out that way. But yeah, this was a divine appointment. God assigned this for him, and he allowed Satan to test Job. So really, all of this is outside of the normal realm of control. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Satan crafted a master plan to absolutely crush Job. And really, Satan is out to attack God himself. He's attacking God's reputation. He thinks that God is not worthy of people to worship him unless, you know, he blesses people. He thinks that the love of God is earned because God treats people well and is good and all this stuff. And if he just takes away his blessing, people will fall away from him. And often that's the case. You know, a lot of us are not quite as strong as Job, where things go bad and we start complaining and falling away or whatever. But in the reverse, sometimes suffering is a path to God. Like, I've found in my life that when things are easy, I'm actually more likely to do foolish things or not really seek God because I don't feel the need as much. But when things are hard, it's like, oh man, I got to run to him. He's my only hope, because I can't solve this on my own. I can't bring provision to my own life without his provision. So it can go either way, but yeah, we don't really fully understand the reason why God allowed this stuff and why God allowed Satan to completely devastate Job's life. But there's some clues, you know, we can read it and discover. Anyway, let's go on to chapter 31, which I think is the last chapter for today's reading. Just 3 chapters. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I love this one. This is awesome. These first verses of chapter 31 are really good wisdom. Like, especially if you struggle with lust. Fantastic stuff here. And some other things too, like to be very intentional about how you're going to face temptation is something that I feel is not taught in the church or at all anywhere. Like, sadly, it's kind of like each man or woman has to invent his own discipleship course, because while you go to church and hear messages and you have fellowship and stuff, there's generally not like a pathway to approach maturity in the faith. I think it's kind of dropped off over the hundreds of years. If you seek it, you can find it. Like I've actually, for example, made pastors and elders help me because they don't necessarily offer it. They don't go out and ask everybody, hey, I see you're struggling, or I'd like to, help you or teach you this or that. You kind of have to ask them to do that. And thankfully God gave me that spirit to do that. I don't know when it first started, but really in my 20s, since my 20s, I've found mentors and just people I look up to that I can ask questions and anyway. But yeah, Job here has some really good advice in chapter 31. That's really, I need to remember this kind of stuff and write it down and think about it more. Anyway, let's go on with Job chapter 31. I made a covenant with my eyes. How then should I look lustfully at a young woman? For what is the portion from God above, and the heritage from the Almighty on high? Is it not calamity to the unrighteous and disaster to the workers of iniquity? Doesn't he see my ways and count all my steps? If I have walked with falsehood and my foot has hurried to deceit, let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know my integrity. If my step has turned out of the way, if my heart walked after my eyes, if my defilement has stuck to my hands, then let me sow and let another eat. Yes, let the produce of my field be rooted out. If my heart has been enticed to a woman, and I have laid wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others sleep with her. For that would be a heinous crime. Yes, it would be an iniquity to be punished by the judges. For it is a fire that consumes to destruction, and would root out all my increase. If I have despised the cause of my male servant, or of my female servant, when they contended with me, what then will I do when God rises up? When he visits, what will I answer him? Didn't he who made me in the womb make him? Didn't one fashion us in the womb? If I have withheld the poor from their desire, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or have eaten my morsel alone, and the fatherless has not eaten of it. No, from my youth he grew up with me as with a father. I have guided her from my mother's womb. If I have seen any perish for want of clothing, or that the needy had no covering, if his heart hasn't blessed me, if he hasn't been warmed with my sheep's fleece, if I have lifted up my hand against the fatherless because I saw my help in the gate, then let my shoulder fall from the shoulder blade, and my arm be broken from the bone. For calamity from God is a terror to me. Because of his majesty I can do nothing. If I have made gold my hope, and have said to the fine gold, you are my confidence, if I have rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because my hand had gotten much, if I have seen the sun when it shined, or the moon moving in splendor, and my heart has been secretly enticed in my hand through a kiss from my mouth, this also would be an iniquity to be punished by the judges, for I should have denied the God who is above. If I have rejoiced at the destruction of him who hated me, or lifted up myself when evil found him, yes, I have not allowed my mouth to sin by asking his life with a curse. If the men of my tent have not said, who can find one who has not been filled with his meat? The foreigner has not camped in the street, but I have opened my doors to the traveler. If like Adam I have covered my transgressions by hiding my iniquity in my heart, because I feared the great multitude, and the contempt of families terrified me, so that I kept silence and didn't go out of the door. Oh, that I had one to hear me. Behold, here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me. Let the accuser write my indictment. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder, and I would bind it to me as a crown. I would declare to him the number of my steps. I would go near to him like a prince. If my land cries out against me, and its furrows weep together, if I have eaten its fruits without money, or have caused its owners to lose their life, let briars grow instead of wheat, and stinkweed instead of barley. The words of Job are ended. Yeah, so some of this sounds kind of boastful, but in reality, he's just answering the accusations that his friends are bringing before him. Like, even though he's completely destroyed inside, he's depressed and wants to die because of his suffering, he's not a liar. Like, he's not going to just accept the lying accusations of his friends and say, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I deserved it. It kind of reminds me of, I often refer to Harry Potter plot points because I watched that series again recently. It's kind of like when I can't remember her name, but the pink lady with all the cats and stuff takes over Hogwarts because the Minister of Magic is suspicious of Dumbledore and all that stuff. And she does that torture to Harry where she writes on his hands with a cursed quill or whatever. And then afterwards she says to Harry, you know you deserve this. And unfortunately in that story, Harry essentially is deceived by her, and because of his difficult past and depression and suffering in his life, he allowed her false words to sink in and literally sink into his hands in that case. But and so he actually took on the guilt that she was accusing him of, and he didn't actually do anything wrong. But in this case, Job stands up for himself, and I don't see it as boasting. He's just stating facts that his friends should have already known. They've known him long enough to see his behavior. So yeah, I don't like it when I hear people giving this huge exhortation of all their good works, and it sounds kind of like boasting. But in this case, I respect it and I understand. The one that I have actually a harder time with is Paul. I don't remember what chapter. I think it's in Romans, where he kind of lists all the things that he's done. Like, he essentially is showing his pedigree. He's the, Jew of Jews and tribe of Benjamin, all this stuff. And according to the law, he's faultless, all that stuff. It's like, oh, come on, Paul. But anyway, I understand where he's coming from here, and I don't like to toot my own horn, so I guess I have somewhat of a pedigree as well, but I don't like to list the things that I've done as a case for, like God should give me this or I should be treated this way, because in reality, even though I've done righteous things, I've also, committed many sins as well, and I'm far from perfect, so I would never try to list all my good things, because I know as shadows behind them are things that I'm not so proud of. But either way, it's not really about what we have done or haven't done. We know better in the New Testament that salvation is not from works, and it's Christ alone that made way for us to even have any chance, and that was always the plan from the beginning. But that's not what this passage is about yet, so just go with what we got here. The thing that's also interesting, I was thinking I was going to mention about the last chapter, and I kind of forgot. We tend to sort of celebrate when, I think instinctively, or there's something in our humanity that we tend to celebrate when we see successful or rich people fail or fall. Even if beforehand we might have been fans of them or whatever, it seems to be just a thing, like especially in politics, or nowadays it's like super rich tech giants, those kind of people. A lot of us, especially on, I'm not really into the politics and the conspiracy theory stuff, but a lot of people in the streaming world are into that stuff, and that they'll rejoice every time they hear about some rich person falling, or they kind of have conspiracies that the whole world is falling apart because of certain families and all these things, whatever. And some of that might be true, but at the same time, it's like I don't understand the fascination with that. But in the case of Job, and it does seem kind of rare that you have like a really righteous, good person who has that kind of power or fame or wealth. Like in our contemporary time, a person like Job is hard to find. I can't think of a single name of like a king or a super rich person or a famous celebrity who's just blameless, righteous and godly like Job was. So it's a little bit hard to relate to in our context, because most of the people who are in that position in our day are anything but Job. Like they're nothing like Job. But Solomon, he was the wisest man who ever lived, and prior to his mistakes in the end of his life, he was a very godly man as well. And he was, possibly the richest man of all time, but certainly the richest man in his time. And so you can't necessarily say all rich people are evil or they gained their riches through dishonest means or whatever. So it does seem that way these days, but we shouldn't be so quick to judge. Anyway, just some thoughts that came to me when I was reading about how the whole town just turned against him just as soon as he had these difficulties. It kind of reminded me that's what we do these days, We tend to love the stories when the rich person, fails, I guess. Anyway. All right, let's go on to John chapter 1, starting from verse 15, I think through the end. Maybe it's even longer than that. Maybe it's past 51 verses, I don't know. But anyway, we're going to read through verse 51. Let me check something here real quick. Okay. There's a couple of the platforms that I stream to that tend to be a little unstable, so I just want to make sure it's still going, so I can slightly intervene at times if I need to. I think they're all still going. Odyssey is actually kind of the worst when it comes to that. Like the stream seems to keep going, but at the end it never finalizes. So actually, I resorted to doing a local recording just for Odyssey because the recordings never finalize and they just fail. So I have to re-upload to Odyssey after every stream. It's kind of a pain, but it's worth it. I like to have my recordings on there, just so it's not only YouTube. I also have them on Rumble in theory if it works, but anyway, looks like we're going good, so let's keep going. So yeah, the rest of, or at least John chapter 1, 15 through 51. John testified about him. He cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me, for he was before me.' From his fullness we all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The one and only Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, has declared him." This is John's testimony when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He declared, and didn't deny, but he declared, "I am not the Christ." They asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." They said therefore to him, "Who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way of the Lord.'" Isaiah 43, as Isaiah the prophet said. The ones who had been sent were from the Pharisees. They asked him, "Why then do you baptize if you are not the Christ, nor Elijah, nor the prophet?" John answered them, "I baptize in water, but among you stands one whom you don't know. He is the one who comes after me, who is preferred before me, whose sandal strap I'm not worthy to loosen." These things were done in Bethany beyond the Jordan, where John was baptizing. The next day he saw Jesus coming to him and said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is he of whom I said, 'After me comes a man who is preferred before me, for he was before me.' I didn't know him, but for this reason I came baptizing in water, that he would be revealed to Israel." John testified, saying, "I have seen the Spirit descending like a dove out of heaven, and it remained on him. I didn't recognize him, but he who sent me to baptize in water said to me, 'On whomever you will see the Spirit descending and remaining on him is he who baptizes in the Holy Spirit.' I have seen and have testified that this is the Son of God." Again, the next day, John was standing with two of his disciples, and he looked at Jesus as he walked and said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following and said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which is to say, being interpreted, "Teacher, where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and see." They came and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day. It was about the 10th hour. One of the two who heard John and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is, being interpreted, Christ. He brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon the son of Jonah. You shall be called Cephas," which is, by interpretation, Peter. On the next day he was determined to go out into Galilee, and he found Philip. Jesus said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, of the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him and said about him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." Or you are King of Israel. Jesus answered him, "Because I told you I saw you underneath the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." He said to him, "Most certainly, I tell you all, hereafter you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." All right, that's it for today's reading. Let's see, there was something I was going to mention. Oh, it's kind of weird. I've always wondered at this. I've never actually done a study on it, because I don't really care about curiosities and textual story bits. I'm more interested in stuff that I can apply to my life and things that, change me. But I still think about the stuff, and I don't always know what it's talking about. Like, it's weird to me that John the Baptist says he didn't recognize Jesus or didn't know him, or however he phrases it, when the text earlier tells us that John is Jesus's cousin. So it's weird that he wouldn't recognize him. But I just always thought that was weird. But I don't really have any big insights or thoughts I'm really just enjoying reading, and I kind of want to keep these streams pretty short, and they aren't intended to be, like I've said many times, not intended to be teaching or preaching streams. If something occurs to me or I feel like I want to talk about something or somebody's in chat that brings something up, that's fine, but it's not really what I'm intending to do. But yeah, however the spirit leads each day, I'll see how it goes. But yeah, since I'm starting on Sunday, I'm going to try to get the readings done as early as possible, so that if I do have something come up in my schedule that I need to take a day off, I won't get behind in the reading. So I'll probably read tomorrow and, each day unless something comes up. So, but yeah, sorry I don't have any kind of schedule, and maybe there's at least one person that actually is interested in joining me in this journey, and maybe there's somebody frustrated like, oh, I wish I could tune in at a certain time, but I've never been that kind of streamer to stream the schedule. I know that's one thing you can do to have success and growth as a streamer, and I just don't care. I don't care about success or growth. This is just a very unserious hobby for me that I've done for the last 4 years, and that's what it's allowed me to continue doing it. I think it actually becomes a burden when you try to treat it like a job, but you're not succeeding at it, and you put all your energy into it and try to please all the algorithms and all the channels and just aren't seeing what you want to see. It just becomes like a source of depression and burden and burnout. And I've burned out on it a couple of times and taken some breaks and stuff. And I just want to keep it relaxed and unserious. And, but yeah, I'm not really interested in finding followers or viewers or whatever. If somebody's interested, or wants to have a conversation, that's great. I love meeting new people, but not really seeking to build an empire of any kinds. Anyway, but yeah, the replays are always available on my Rumble channel, YouTube, and Odyssey as generally permanent recordings, and all the other platforms. They might stick around for a day or two, maybe as long as a month on some of them, but yeah, if you're wanting to follow along, then you can find the recordings on those 3 platforms, generally permanently. So eventually it'll be kind of fun to look back and have the whole Bible read out. Lord willing that I actually make it through this year. I'm not going to like get down on myself if I somehow don't do it, but it is my goal to stick with it and see how it goes. But things could change, and life throws you curveballs, and you never know. So we'll just take it day by day. So yep, I think that's it for today, and I will see you all next time. Thanks for joining me.